There were 2 wine glasses on the counter. Only one was dirty, and it wasn't mine. She didn't hear me walk in. She was too busy rehearsing a smile in the hallway mirror, not the one she used with me, the one she saves for strangers. That bright, careless, almost teenage grin that makes her dimples show. On the kitchen table was a receipt from a place we used to go when we were still us. Same restaurant, same table number, same waiter. Only this time, the reservation was under my name. But I hadn't been there in over a year. I took a picture of the receipt and left it exactly where it was. Not a word. At 7:12 p.m., she walked into the kitchen, heels clicking like gunshots, black coat draped over her shoulders, her phone lighting up with a text she didn't want me to see. She raised an eyebrow at me and laughed. "I'm going out." "Don't be jealous," she said, grabbing her keys like it was some kind of joke. "It's just a date." I didn't raise my voice, didn't accuse her, didn't beg. I just said one sentence. One that made her entire body stiffen like she'd been shot through the spine. "Tell him your husband paid for dinner." Her fingers stopped midair. She didn't look at me, didn't blink, didn't breathe. The silence stretched so long I could hear the clock ticking behind her. And then, she laughed again, but this time, it was broken. "You're being dramatic," she whispered. But her hands were trembling. That was the exact moment the game changed. Because now she was guessing. And I'd only just started playing. It wasn't the lipstick that gave her away, or the new perfume, or even the high heels that hadn't seen daylight since our cousin's wedding 3 years ago. No, it was the way she hummed. She was in the kitchen reheating pasta, leftover penne I made the night before, and she was humming some soft melody with no rhythm, no structure, just random tuneless notes. Dana only hummed when she was excited. That used to mean she was thinking about me. Back when she'd smile without forcing it. Back when I still existed in the part of her mind that wasn't just used for tax forms and grocery lists. I stood by the hallway, half hidden behind the wall, pretending to check a notification on my phone while watching her. The way she smoothed the sides of her dress. The way she tilted her head to check her reflection in the microwave door. She thought I wasn't paying attention anymore, and maybe I hadn't been, not for a while. But something about tonight felt rehearsed, coordinated, almost like a performance for someone who wasn't me. She didn't see me pick up the crumpled receipt that had fallen out of her coat pocket earlier. Tavira's Bistro. 6:45 p.m. 1 appetizer. 2 entrees. A glass of Pinot. Her favorite. The receipt was printed in my name. She'd used my OpenTable account. The same account that syncs with my email. Rookie mistake. But I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the receipt in her face. I didn't even let her know I saw it. That's not how this story begins. I simply tucked it into my wallet and waited. At 6:17 p.m., she walked out of the bedroom, draped in that black wraparound dress I hadn't seen in years, the one she swore she'd thrown away. She looked stunning and unfamiliar, like someone I used to know before the silence between us got louder than any argument ever could. She tossed me a smile like I was an old coworker she barely remembered. "I'm heading out," she said casually, grabbing her keys off the counter. "Don't be jealous." Her tone was smug, careless, a subtle knife wrapped in velvet. I looked at her, long enough for her to pause at the door. That's when I said it. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just spoke with the same calmness you use when asking someone to pass the salt. "Tell him your husband still pays your credit card bill." The hallway went dead silent. Her fingers tightened around the doorknob. She didn't move. She didn't speak. Just stood there, still as a statue. As if one wrong move might shatter the glass floor she'd been walking on for months. I saw her jaw clench, barely. Her back was still to me, but her breathing changed. Slower, deeper, controlled. When she finally turned to face me, the mask was gone. No more smirk, no more careless confidence. Just a woman caught in the headlights of a truth she never expected to be spoken out loud. She didn't ask how I knew. She didn't deny it. She just blinked, twice, and said, "We'll talk when I get back." Then she walked out. But here's the thing. I wasn't going to be there when she returned. Because I'd already read the messages. I knew the name. I knew the hotel. And I knew something she didn't. I had a plan. And it started long before that receipt fell out of her coat pocket. I didn't wait for her to get back. I didn't pace by the window or check the clock like I had done so many nights before, pretending she was just with a friend, or working late, or clearing her head. I'd stopped lying to myself 3 weeks ago, The night I opened the shared cloud folder on our computer that I thought we both forgot about. Dana was careless with tech. She'd upload stuff to Google Photos through her old tablet, forgetting that the syncing feature was still turned on. That's how I saw them. The first photo didn't hit me right away. It was blurry, low-lit, and at first glance looked like a shot from some rooftop restaurant. I thought it might have been one of those Pinterest screenshots she kept for vacation ideas. But the second one? That hit like a brick to the chest. It was her, my wife, sitting at a candlelit table, holding hands with a man across from her. His face was turned just enough for me to see the smirk. Her head tilted the same way she used to when she was with me. That soft, lean-in posture I hadn't seen in years. And her smile? That wasn't a polite smile. That was the smile you give someone when you want them to think you're all theirs. I clicked through 15 photos. Some were from a weekend trip I never knew she took, a cabin in Vermont, judging by the timestamp and snow in the background. In one, she was wearing a hoodie I thought she'd given to Goodwill last year. In another, they were on a ski lift. His arm was around her waist like he owned her. Like she wasn't married. Like I didn't exist. That was the night something inside me died. But not in the loud, dramatic way I always thought it would if I got cheated on. It wasn't rage. It wasn't screaming. It was quiet. Numb. Like walking into an empty house and realizing the furniture's gone. No goodbye note. No explanation. Just the eerie silence of something over. But I didn't confront her. Instead, I backed everything up. Downloaded the full album. Timestamped it. Stored it in 3 different drives. Not because I was planning to sue her or make a public scene, but because I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. That the distance between us hadn't just been in my head. I started watching. Tracking. Not obsessively. Just enough to be ready. She thought I was too dull to notice. Too dependent. Too weak. And maybe I was. Maybe I still am. But weak doesn't mean blind. It doesn't mean I didn't feel her pull away with every passing day, every fake smile, every "you're overthinking it," when I asked why her phone was always face down. I noticed. I noticed everything. So when she came home that night, the night I dropped the sentence that made her freeze, I had already booked a room at a local motel under a fake name. Already moved some cash into a private account. Already sent copies of those photos to a lawyer friend of mine in Vermont, just in case she tried to flip the script later. She walked in around 11:40 p.m., thinking I'd be asleep. She didn't call out to me. She never did anymore. But the moment she saw the empty hallway and the single envelope I left on the table, she knew. Inside the envelope, just a flash drive and a sticky note. It said, "You were never good at hiding." She didn't call. Didn't text. For the first time since we met, there was nothing but silence from her side. And me? I sat in a cheap motel with buzzing fluorescent lights, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of man I had let myself become, and what kind of man I'd have to become next. Because this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about what I was going to do with it. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was sad or angry. That part had already passed. What kept me awake was the silence. The kind of eerie silence that hums louder than noise. I lay on that stiff motel mattress, watching the headlights from the parking lot crawl across the ceiling, one after the other, trying to map out the next phase of whatever this was. Divorce? Exposure? Confrontation? I wasn't sure yet. I just knew I couldn't go back to being the guy who looked away every time something felt off. The next morning, I returned to the house before sunrise. She was still asleep, or at least pretending to be. The flash drive I left was gone. The envelope was gone. But the sticky note? Still sitting there on the kitchen counter, folded in half. She hadn't thrown it away. That was the first sign. Not of guilt, but fear. That meant she didn't know what else I had. That was good. I needed her to stay guessing. I didn't speak a word to her that day. Just acted like everything was normal. Asked if she wanted coffee. Told her the trash needed to go out. She played along, but she wasn't herself. Her eyes darted, voice too calm, footsteps too soft. Her whole performance was off by just enough to confirm what I already knew. The act was slipping. She didn't know how much I knew, or what I planned to do with it. And that made her vulnerable. Later that night, after she left for yoga, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went through her coat pockets. I used to feel guilty for even thinking about it, like I was the one betraying her privacy. But not anymore. Not after the photos. Not after the dinner receipt in my name. Not after she smirked at me and told me not to be jealous. Inside the left pocket was a receipt for dry cleaning. Standard stuff. In the right, folded behind a packet of gum and a crumpled tissue, was something far more interesting, a business card. It was matte black, unmarked on the front except for a small embossed logo. On the back, a name, Brent L. Farrow, Commercial Real Estate. And beneath that, a handwritten number, not a work number. A personal one. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was hers. Dana always did her twos with a sharp curve on the bottom. I used to think it was cute when she wrote little reminders on post-it notes in the kitchen. 2 apples, 2 eggs, 2 more days till your birthday. Now, seeing it on the back of some guy's business card, it made my stomach turn. Brent. Of course his name would be Brent. I took a photo of the card and returned it to the exact spot. The trap had to stay untouched. That's how I operated now, not with confrontation, but observation. I was done playing defense. I was setting the board. The next day, I found Brent's LinkedIn. He was tall, clean-cut, typical jawline of the month type. Big smile, expensive teeth, the kind of handshake that's probably been practiced in the mirror. His profile said he was recently divorced. Fitting. Guess he and Dana had something in common already. I wanted to message him. Tell him everything. Send him the photos, the timeline, the proof. But I didn't. Because I had a better idea. I scheduled a property viewing. It was easy. His company had listings all over the area. I used a fake email and my middle name. Booked an appointment for next Thursday at noon. Just enough time to prepare. Enough time to let Dana walk a little further into her own mess. I wanted to see the look on his face when he shook hands with the husband he didn't know existed. But before that, I needed to make sure she wouldn't catch on. So that night, over dinner, I asked her about her day, her yoga, her friends. She told me how relaxed she felt, how she finally felt centered again. She even laughed, a weak, careful laugh, like she wasn't sure if I'd laugh back. I did. I laughed harder than I had in months, because she thought she was getting away with it. And that was the most dangerous part. She thought I was still that same clueless man folding her laundry while she texted someone else in the bathroom. She had no idea I'd already set the next 5 dominoes in place. She didn't know I was already watching her every move, and that I was about to stand face to face with her secret. And she definitely didn't know what I planned to do with him, or her, once I was done watching. Thursday arrived faster than I expected. It's strange how time moves differently when you're pretending everything's normal, knowing full well it's not. Dana kissed me goodbye that morning like it was any other day. I pretended to sip my coffee and smiled like a man too dull to know better. She said she'd be home late, mentioned some new client dinner she couldn't get out of. Her words, not mine. She didn't notice that I didn't ask for details. I arrived at the property viewing 10 minutes early. It was a sleek downtown office space listed under Brent's agency. I picked one that was just expensive enough to suggest I was serious, but not so high-end that he'd be suspicious. The front desk receptionist offered me a bottle of water and told me Mr. Farrow would be right out. I almost laughed. Mr. Farrow. As if he wasn't just some well-groomed homewrecker sleeping with another man's wife. When he came out to greet me, I nearly choked on my own breath. Not because I was intimidated, but because he looked exactly like the type of man who steals wives without guilt. Tall, tanned, watch worth more than my monthly salary. White teeth, gray blazer, hands in his pockets like he owned the air we were breathing. He extended his hand and introduced himself. I shook it. Garrett, I said, the alias I'd chosen. Garrett Mason. Nice to meet you. He led me through the space, pitching exposed brick and open concept layouts, but I wasn't listening. I was studying him. The cadence of his voice, the subtle cockiness in how he paused after each sales line. I watched for anything human, guilt, nerves, discomfort, but he didn't flinch. To him, I was just another client. Just another man who hadn't been betrayed by the same person he was probably texting between meetings. Halfway through the tour, he stopped at the window and asked me what kind of business I ran. I smiled and said, "Oh, I don't run it. Not anymore. My wife did. Until she got distracted." Something flickered in his eyes, but he hid it well. Too well. He gave a polite laugh, nodded as if he understood some private joke I hadn't finished telling. I stepped closer, pretending to admire the view, and added, "You ever meet someone's wife, think she's single, and then find out later she wasn't? Crazy how often that happens these days." He finally looked at me. Really looked. His eyes narrowed, just a little. "You'd be surprised," he said smoothly. "People hide all kinds of things." I shrugged. "Yeah. especially rings. Her husband's. The silence hung between us like fog. Neither of us moved. Then, like nothing happened, he cleared his throat, smiled again, and pivoted back into his script about square footage and flexible leasing options. But I knew. He knew. And now he knew that I knew. I finished the tour, thanked him for his time, told him I'd think it over. We shook hands again, but this time his grip was tighter. He wasn't smiling anymore, just nodding, processing. By the time I got back to the car, my heart was racing, not from confrontation, but from restraint. I didn't shout. I didn't punch. I didn't even mention Dana by name. But I'd given him just enough to lose sleep over. Enough to plant a seed of fear that I wasn't the oblivious pushover she must have described. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called my office and requested time off. 2 weeks. No questions asked. I had and used vacation days, and I intended to use every one of them. Not for healing, not for closure, for strategy. Because phase 1 was complete. Brent knew. Now it was time for Dana to feel what it was like to be outmaneuvered. I had the photos. I had the timeline. I had the receipts. And now, I had the attention of the man she risked our marriage for. But what I didn't have yet, what I was going to take next, was her peace of mind. 2 days passed without a single word between Dana and me that wasn't painfully polite. We became business partners in our own home, transactions of necessity. Can you pass the salt? Do we need more detergent? I'm taking the car this morning. Just surface-level static to cover up the blaring silence underneath. If she suspected anything about my meeting with Brent, she didn't say. But I could feel it. In the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking. In how her eyes flicked toward her phone every time it buzzed, slower now, with hesitation. She was rattled. That was good. That meant she wasn't thinking clearly. It was Sunday evening when things started to shift. I was pretending to watch a documentary on the couch when Dana walked in from the garage, holding something in her hand. A white envelope. My handwriting on the front. Her lips were tight. Her knuckles were white. I recognized the envelope. It was one I had slipped into her glove compartment the day before, right next to the emergency kit she never touched. Inside had been a single photograph, one of the 15 I'd saved from her cloud folder. Just one. Nothing graphic. Just the one where she's laughing, head tilted, Brent's hand on her knee. I had written nothing on the back. I didn't need to. She stood in front of me for a full minute before speaking. What is this? Her voice was flat, like she already knew but needed to hear me say it. I turned down the volume and looked up slowly, taking my time. I told you, I said calmly. You're not good at hiding. Her eyes narrowed. How long have you known? I shrugged. Long enough to know I'm not the one who should be answering questions. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, staring at me like she was trying to find the version of me she thought she married. The passive one, the compliant one, the one who always forgave her before she even apologized. But he wasn't there anymore. I had buried that man the moment I saw her hold another man's hand with the same fingers that used to trace circles on my back. She walked out without saying another word. Not to her room. Not to the kitchen. Out the front door. I waited exactly 6 minutes before I followed. She was sitting in her car with the engine off, phone in hand, staring at the screen like it held her final breath. I stood beside the driver's side window and tapped once. She startled. She hadn't even noticed me coming. Calling him won't help, I said. He already knows who I am. She didn't open the window, just looked up at me through the glass. Her face pale, lips slightly parted like a caught thief. I didn't wait for a reply. I just turned and walked back inside. That night, she didn't sleep in our room. But I knew she wouldn't leave either. Not yet. Because now she had to wonder how far this went. How much I knew. What I planned to do with it. And just like that, the dynamic flipped. For the first time since this whole thing began, she was the one checking over her shoulder. She was the one waking up early to look through my drawers. She was the one hovering near the front door when I left, trying to catch a hint of where I was going. On Tuesday, she asked me, casually, as she packed a salad, if I'd ever thought about going to therapy. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. Like she was trying to reset the narrative. Turn this into a we problem. Maybe we both made mistakes moment. But I wasn't giving her that. I told her I already had someone I was talking to. That part was true, except it wasn't a therapist. It was Brent's ex-wife. Her name was Mallory, and she was a lot more talkative than I expected. I never planned on reaching out to her. It started as nothing more than curiosity. Brent's ex-wife, Mallory. Her Facebook was still public, and a late-night rabbit hole led me through photos of a life that looked pristine on the surface. Destination weddings, charity galas, dog adoption days. But between the smiling captions and hashtag perfect memories, something felt off. There was a look in her eyes I recognized too well. That quiet ache, like you're standing next to someone who's slowly erasing you, pretending not to notice. I sent a message. Just a short one. I didn't expect a response. Hi Mallory. This is awkward. I believe we have a shared problem. Her name is Dana. She replied within an hour. That conversation opened a door I didn't know existed. Mallory didn't just know about Dana. She knew everything. The timeline. The lies. The trip to Vermont. The same damn cabin, apparently, he used with every woman he got comfortable with. She told me she'd suspected Brent was seeing someone new, but she hadn't been able to confirm it. Until now. We talked for nearly 3 hours that first night. Not like strangers. Like survivors. She wasn't bitter, just tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones after you've forgiven someone so many times, you start to believe you're the one who needs to change. Her story was eerily similar to mine. The subtle gaslighting, the vanishing intimacy, the endless rationalizations. I told her about the photos, the flash drive, the restaurant reservation under my name. I even told her about the business card I found in Dana's coat. She laughed, not mockingly, but like someone finally seeing the missing piece of a puzzle. He used to keep those same cards in his golf bag. Said it made him look exclusive, she said. He never changed his game, just changed the woman. That's when I realized something that chilled me deeper than all the betrayals combined. Brent didn't love Dana. Not really. He was recycling her. She was just a new player slotted into the same worn script. And she had no idea. Mallory and I met in person 3 days later. A quiet diner off the highway. Neutral ground. When she walked in, she looked exactly how I imagined she would, elegant but weary. She ordered black coffee, no sugar. I didn't order anything. I just wanted to hear her speak. She didn't hold back. Brent had lied about money, about exes, about jobs he never had. He even faked a knee injury to get out of meeting her family for Thanksgiving one year. He hated being around people who loved me, she said. Made him feel disposable. I asked her why she stayed so long. She looked out the window, thinking. Because I wanted the lie to be true. Because the alternative meant I'd wasted years of my life on a man who only ever practiced how to charm his next target. It hit me like a slap to the face. I had said the exact same thing to myself in the mirror just a week earlier. That night, back in my car, I opened the glove compartment and looked at the original envelope again. The one I'd given Dana with the photo inside. I added something to it, a second flash drive. This one had a copy of my conversation with Mallory. Screenshots. Dates. A full summary. I printed it, clean and formatted, and sealed it into a new envelope. Labeled it, "If I ever doubt myself again." It wasn't for her. It was for me. Because the scariest part about betrayal isn't discovering it. It's how fast your brain starts trying to excuse it. You start questioning yourself, minimizing it, blaming your tone or your job or how often you forget to take out the trash. But I needed to remember. I needed something physical, something real, for the nights when I would start to miss the woman who no longer existed. The next morning, Dana stood in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone with her coffee. I watched her from the hallway. She was wearing my hoodie again. The one she used to wear on Sundays when we watched movies in bed. The one she'd abandoned for months. Now it was back, like nothing had changed. Like she could just step into the past and pretend it never shattered. She looked up and smiled softly. "You want to do something today? Like old times?" I stared at her for a long second and said, "Sure." But in my head, I whispered, "You have no idea what's coming." Because Mallory and I weren't done. We had something planned. And Dana was the centerpiece. Dana was up early the next morning. She was already dressed, sitting at the kitchen table with a blank stare and untouched coffee by the time I walked in. There was something about her posture, that tight, rigid stillness, that told me she knew things were slipping. She looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from holding on to a mask for too long. "I think we need to talk," she said. I nodded and poured myself a cup. "Sure, but I think I'll talk first." Her fingers twitched around the mug, but she didn't interrupt. I took my time, sat across from her, leaned back in the chair like a man who wasn't afraid anymore. I know everything, I began. And I've known for a while. I know about Brent. I know about Vermont. I know about the receipts, the photos, the phone calls that weren't that serious. I know more than you've ever admitted to yourself, and certainly more than you planned on ever telling me. Her mouth opened slightly, as if to explain or plead or spin it, but I raised a hand. Don't. This isn't about getting the truth from you. I already have it. In writing, in pictures, in voice memos. You don't need to give me a speech. I slid a folder across the table. Inside, a signed lease for my new apartment. A separation agreement drafted by a lawyer. A letter. Not angry. Not cruel. Just honest. Quiet. Final. This is what happens now, I said. You can keep the house for now. I'm not fighting for bricks. I'm not staying to play power games. You'll find that everything has already been moved out. The guest room? That's where I've been sleeping the last 2 nights. Thought you'd notice. I guess not. Dana's face was a strange mix of regret and disbelief. She wasn't crying. Not yet. But I could see the tremble in her throat, the struggle to keep her jaw from shaking. That perfect exterior, the one she used on Brent, on friends, on social media, it was cracking in real time. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said. I'm doing this because I finally remembered who I used to be before I bent myself into someone easy to betray, before I let someone else define my worth. I stayed too long, hoping you'd come back to the version of you I married. But that person's gone, and I'm okay with that now. She tried to speak again, but the words didn't come out. Just a soft, pathetic gasp of air. I stood up, picked up my coffee, and paused at the doorway. One more thing, I added, turning slightly. You were never as clever as you thought, but I was never as weak as you hoped. And then I left. No screaming, no dramatics, no slammed doors, just silence, the kind that carries dignity. 3 months later, I was sitting at a small cafe downtown, flipping through a manuscript draft I'd finally picked up again, something I'd abandoned during the slow collapse of our marriage. I wasn't sad. In fact, I was lighter than I had felt in years. I had moved into a modest but beautiful apartment overlooking the river. I'd started jogging again, reconnected with old friends I had pushed aside during the years of walking on eggshells. My laugh was real now, not that forced chuckle I used to offer in response to insults disguised as jokes. Mallory and I stayed in touch, not romantically, just support. A strange sort of friendship forged in shared wreckage. Sometimes we joked that Brent and Dana deserved each other. 2 performers constantly trying to outlie the other. Last I heard, he had ghosted her. She never saw it coming. But I did. That afternoon, as I sipped my espresso, I caught a reflection in the cafe window. Dana. She was standing across the street, clutching a grocery bag, looking directly at me through the glass. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. She didn't wave, didn't cross the street, just stood there, staring at the man she had forgotten existed, the one who knew his own worth now. The one who didn't need her permission to move on. And I smiled. Not out of revenge. Out of peace. Because I had made it out. Because I was whole again. And she knew it.